Ed, welcome to the Mr. Beacon podcast. It's great to have you on.
Well, thank you, Mr. Beacon.
Well, this podcast kind of started off all about Bluetooth and indoor location and asset tracking. And then we realized, and our audience is entrepreneurs, solution designers, and just people that want to learn about this stuff. And we figured out pretty quickly that you need to understand what the technology is being used for. And I think that's where you come in. You have a catbird seat on an industry that is really embracing and needing active traceability technology, and there's lots of different tech that's being used. So what I want to do in this discussion is learn a bit about your market, your organization, what you do, and some of the things that are driving technology adoption and standards in the fresh produce area. And we're just coming up to the big trade show that your organization sponsors in Orlando. So I'm going to go there. I'm excited about that. But maybe we should take a step back and for you to introduce yourself and your organization.
All right. And I'm Ed Treacy. I am the Vice President of Supply Chain and Sustainability with the International Fresh Produce Association. And IFPA, or as Europeans know us, IFPA, was formed by the joining or uniting of two great produce trade associations, the United Fresh Produce Association and who I work for, Produce Marketing Association. We united and came together on January 1st this year, 2022. And we're doing more of the same, deeper, wider, and bigger. And show you mentioned is our Global Produce and Floral show in Orlando at the end of October. And, it's a expo and education and really a meeting of, as I tell people, 22,000 of my closest friends in the industry. And we also put on approximately 28 or 29 other events around the world. Our global show is our largest, but we do a food service show, a retail show, a couple floral, and a host of other regional shows. And we have 2,900 ish members and member companies, and every employee of that company is a member of ours. We have a full blown affiliate in Australia, New Zealand, based in Melbourne, Australia, IFPA. ANZ or Australia, New Zealand, and they deal with that part of the world. They're like a franchisee. We're financially and content wise very connected. They put on a show. In addition to that, we have country councils, which is a group of members who come together to address local issues in their operating region. We've country councils in South Africa, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have over 1,000 volunteer members who serve on a council or a committee. The country councils are an example of that. On top of that, we have food service council and retail council and organic council and government affairs and political action. And in my world, I work in the science and tech area. I have a supply chain council, a sustainability council, a product identification committee. We have a technology council. We in our food service area, we've probably the largest council is our food safety council, and through those we bring industry together and address concerns and challenges as a whole industry. Um, and In addition, we're involved in other initiatives, coalitions, or um, things that aren't solely owned or managed by us. And one of those is the Produce Traceability Initiative, and that was a an industry led initiative to address, I guess, the lack of traceability, whole chain traceability within our industry. And that was formed back in 2008 and 2009, after the 2006 spinach food E. coli issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what that proved to our industry was we don't have our act together as far as being able to track and trace and recall product when there's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the challenges, we've always had, and this really highlighted, and is we operate in a commodity market where brand is really the third or fourth decision criteria when consumers buy fresh produce. It's quality, its price, its perception of food safety, and
Mm-hmm.
then brand may come in.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, one of the challenges we have is when people get sick and they get asked, "What'd you eat?" I think
Mm-hmm.
I ate,
Mm-hmm.
lettuce or tomatoes or this or that. When you ask them, what brand of tomatoes did you eat? You get a blank stare. When you ask someone what brand of mayonnaise you ate, you can guarantee they can not only can they tell you, they can go to their shelf and grab the jar and say, yeah, this is it. And I
Right.
put this on my sandwich 2 weeks ago and, turn it over. Here's a lot number. And they can proceed from there. With us operating in a commodity market and all the way through the consumer and highly perishable product. By the time you get sick enough, go to a doctor, that product, if it had any packaging, and only half the product here in this side of the pond is packaged, the rest is loose. Even if you had it, that's in the landfill somewhere or being recycled. And, and so, the industry got together, and one of the reasons, or one of the uses of their trade associations, is we can, and we're very good at forming and managing initiatives like this. So back then, United Fresh and PMA, of which we are both now, and the Canadian Produce Marketing Association were asked by their members to create this initiative and lead us and take us from where we need to go. We quickly brought in GS1 because that's the language our industry speaks, business to business, and we created the Produce Traceability Initiative.
Amazing. What's progress like? I remember that spinach E. coli scare, and it was more than a scare; it was real. People got sick. But
And
my
died,
kind
yeah.
of my recollection is basically all the spinach in the country basically got thrown away, and obviously
Uh,
that's tremendously
yeah,
wasteful. I don't know whether
and
that's actually what happened, but that's my
no,
perception.
you're spot on. Um, and it was the largest recall to date, if you will. And given the lack of progress of the FDA and local state officials in identifying the source of the contaminated product, um, FDA went to and CDC went to the press and said, you need to tell people fresh, frozen, doesn't matter if it's spinach, throw it out or it could kill you. And what was happening, and there was a little over 200 people sick, and 5 people died. And it was one seen from end of August '06. Every week another person would die, and then finally FDA said, we gotta throw out all spinach. You can imagine what it did to our reputation as an industry. Um, our consumers thought we had much better way of tracing our product and executing recalls. And what happened, the human life was paramount on driving us. We kill our people who ate this product. 5 of them died. One was a 2-year-old boy named Kyle Allgood, whose mother made him a spinach smoothie, and it killed him.
Oh, oh my
The
god.
other 4 were elderly ladies, and
Hmm.
that really rocked the industry. And we said, collectively, we gotta, we're better than this. We gotta be better. And that's why we got together and got great input, and all the CEOs of the industry leading companies across the supply chain banded together and said, what do you need for us to do? We need to do it. And as well, livelihoods were wiped out. Multi-generation grower and processors of spinach were instantly out of business. And there was a tremendous financial impact, but that was secondary to the health impact of those affected people. As well, because we, consumers were aware that, oh, spinach isn't safe, well, the consumption of other leafy greens went down.
Mhm.
And what was the shame is, we're the only product you can eat that if you eat more, you'll be healthy and healthier. And
Yes.
no other commodity or food group can claim that. We
Yeah.
have it. And,
Yeah.
the nutrition conference at the White House last week was a long overdue, but the main theme of that was we need to get our U.S. consumers eating more healthy products, fruits and vegetables, in order to improve their health. Um, roll forward 10 or 12 years after the initiative, we landed on a standardized case labeling, barcoded case label process using GS1 standard label. And last count, around we're creeping up on 70% of all cartons in the U.S. supply chain are PTI compliant and labeled with PTI labels. And put that in perspective, um,
So the
it's
PTI is Produce Traceability Initiative, is
Traceability
it?
Initiative.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has its own website, producetraceability.org. There are 25 plus best practices and guidance documents and everything you need to know about doing this and executing and creating your labels is on the website. And we spent thousands of hours on that effort,
Hmm.
and it's been beneficial. You know, there are somewhere around 6 billion cases of produce in the U.S. supply chain, which means we've got over 4 billion labels being applied every year. Not a bad measure of success, but I
Hmm.
won't be happy until we have 6 billion
Hmm.
labels being applied. Um, Roll forward in 2011, the U.S. government introduced the Food Safety Modernization Act, which outlined in Section 204 of that act talked to traceability specifically. And, we had been quite involved with PTI, with the FDA, and letting them know what we're doing, how we're making out, and knowing the FSMA regulations were coming, we wanted to ensure that they would align with what we had created, and they did. When they're finally the initial draft was released. Um, but in the meantime, we still had recalls. We're still affected the health of many people in this country. We had a couple of bad bouts with cantaloupes, and the worst was in Colorado, where 44 people lost their lives. And we're able to successfully and fairly quickly identify the source of that. And that was good. Then a couple of years later, we had a spat of romaine recalls. And
Hmm.
some of those were able. able to identify the source quickly. Some we were not, and we think they weren't specific to a field or processing plant, but they're in the possibly the environmental area, possibly water source
Hmm.
was contaminated, but we did narrow it down to an area. Um, and then a good thing happened, I believe, for our industry. Frank Yanis, who was VP of Food Safety at Walmart, who was a big proponent of PTI, joined FDA as deputy commissioner.
Hmm.
And traceability and the regulation was his in his area of responsibility. And then we saw the FSMA 204 draft rule. Um, it probably 90% aligned with PTI. There were some elements that we as an industry felt added no value to executing a trace back and recall, and we let them know that. And when I put together a committee to write the comments of our members, and we submitted those, and we're anxiously awaiting the final rule, which has to be to the Federal Register by November 7th, and then it'll be probably a couple weeks process after that it'll be made public. And then our effort in compliance starts. Up till now, PTI has been voluntary. They will not and cannot say you need to implement PTI, but if PTI solves 95% of the solution,
Hmm.
our industry already knows what direction we're going. And
That's good.
the last 5%, and we've been very good at labeling the cases on the front end of
Hmm.
the supply chain, on the
Hmm.
packing process. The rule of thumb: when the product goes in the box, the label goes on the box.
Hmm.
um, what's been lacking, and Walmart's done a good job, and a couple of other retailers, Schnucks and Publix, on using and capturing and storing that information. And
Mm.
what FSMA 204, if the draft rule is a good indication, um, all those subsequent receivers of fresh produce will have to do their part in capturing and storing and being able to report back out down to the lot number level to the regulators when requested, and in a sortable spreadsheet format within 24 hours.
Interesting. So you've this is like more than I could have asked for in terms of an overview of what's happening in this space, and I find it really interesting. There's a few kind of detailed questions. Just so, where are we in terms of the legislation? So you mentioned there was FSMA, and you said 204. Is it 2004 or
No, it's
2004?
Section 204.
So
FSMA
Section
is
204.
a mile long document, and
Yeah.
Section 204 of FSMA deals with uh, food traceability.
Okay.
And and it only applies to around 20-ish commodities that are on the food traceability list, are
Ah.
currently on the list. However, um, our industry and major buyers have indicated that they cannot support one process in their business for tomatoes and leafy greens and sprouts. They need to have one process for all produce. And
Yeah.
my background, I came from grocery retail. I ran the distribution operations for major retailers. And I agree. It's hard enough to train your people to do it one way, and asking them if it's case of lettuce, do this and capture this information and do it this with it. But if it's strawberries, don't have to do, step 5, 7, 9, and 11.
Mm.
That'll never happen. And so we're treating, even though FSMA 204 will deal and address and enforce only a specific list of commodities, we are treating it as if it applies to all produce because the buyers will treat it that way.
And that's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
Consistency
and
means it's going to be implemented.
on items not on the list until it is.
Right. But
And yeah.
so where are we in so you mentioned the FSMA was created and there's a lot of work that's been going on, and you mentioned moving on to compliance. So it's an act that exists. It was passed, but it was phased in. Is that the
Yeah,
situation?
an act is a law, and then it has many components, and each of those components um, require regulations.
Hmm.
FSMA 204 is a regulation dealing with, or a series of regulations dealing with food traceability.
Mm.
And we're now, and the process is the government releases a draft rule.
Hmm.
First, they hold a series of listening sessions and consultations and learn,
Hmm.
and they were very, very good at that. Then they draft a first draft rule. They release it. They ask for comments. They got thousands and tens of thousands of comments. They
Hmm.
need to sift through, consider those, update the draft rule, finalize the rule, and then once the final rule is drafted, they have to socialize it through a number of government bodies. One is the Office of Budget Management, make sure their regulation is not going to bring financial hardship on the
Hmm.
overall on
Hmm.
the industry. And there's a whole bunch of checks and balances internal that they have to go through, and then they hand it over to the Federal Register, and that's the agency that officially posts it and
Hmm.
makes it public.
Hmm.
And then and they take a couple of weeks from time they get it until that happens. And then as part of the regulation, there's an effective date and an enforcement date. And
Okay.
on the current draft regulation, it said the effective date would be 60 days after being posted,
Hmm.
and the enforcement date would be 24 months beyond that.
Hmm.
If that doesn't change, we're going to be held accountable to the new regulations on traceability somewhere in middle of January 2025, which is not that far down the road. And
Right.
if you think about some of our major retailers, Kroger last count had 59 produce distribution centers
Hmm.
across the country. They have to affect change, and they got thousands of stores. They
Hmm.
have to change their processes on receiving and capturing and storing and sharing data when requested, and the current regulation requires them to track lot number all the way to an individual store or restaurant.
Hmm.
They're referred to as retail food establishments,
Hmm.
but they don't do that now.
Hmm.
And that's a huge undertaking in order to implement that and implement it effectively.
So I just lost track of what you were saying there. So were you talking about like restaurants? When does this
Yeah,
impact
they're
restaurants?
included. And the
Okay.
way the current draft regulation reads is any retail food establishment, and I think they have to have greater than 10 full time equivalent employees,
Okay.
which eliminates very few. Maybe
Right.
some convenience stores or
Yeah.
a very, very small, kiosk in a mall or something like that. But anyone with 10 or more full time employees, restaurant or store, needs to track lot number by product and be able to produce that within 24 hours in a electronic sortable spreadsheet format to the government if they're get the phone call.
Interesting. Well, I'm interested in this on many fronts. One is obviously I am a consumer of food, and so I don't want to get sick. And I have got sick many times from, but who knows how and why. And I'm really interested in improvements in there because no one enjoys being sick. But obviously, I work in the technology business. Williot has auto ID technology that will hopefully make conforming to some of these processes easier. And this podcast has a bunch of other folks with competing and different technologies. So I'm interested in talking about how technology can help in this process and where people are at and what the problems are. What can be solved. And I think back 7 years ago, before I joined Williot, I was a consultant in this space, Bluetooth tagging, Bluetooth beacons, and I had a really fascinating project for a company that made herbs and spices, and they had a very progressive guy there. He was actually son of the owner, and he wanted to really shake things up, and he wanted to track everything that came into their processing plant, everything that went out. He wanted to track every tool, machine, and person who touched what, and be able to expose that information. Get the information from his suppliers and expose it to his customers. He wanted this to be a differentiator, and he just felt like things could be better than they were. And I remember, he struggled tremendously because, a lot of the software systems that they were using had no way of absorbing this information and so forth. So where where are the opportunities for technology to help in this process? It seems like we have a compelling event. 2025, as you point out, is not far away. If you start now on a new project, you're going to be struggling to get it live in 2025 at any scale. I assume that the penalties for not conforming are not good, and penalties to one side. You pointed out the consequences when things go wrong. It's just bad for the industry, and we want people to be consuming more healthy vegetables and not get sick. It's just the right thing. So where are the opportunities? Where are the gaps? Where would you suggest people that are creating software and tools focus their energies?
I think, and I've been quite vocal about it, is company, and there's been, FDA hailed a challenge, a technology challenge to for technology companies to provide or create low cost traceability solutions, and that helped. Um, and I certainly got interest of Silicon Valley in our challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think if I was running a tech company, I would focus on um, processes or devices that can be integrated into the current work that's being done by people who move boxes of produce through the supply chain from the packing until point of consumer buying.
Mm-hmm.
And anything you can do to incorporate that into their normal activities rather than, okay, we need to put in RFID people will kill me, but everyone needs to put a 5 cent tag on every carton, and everyone needs to install a fixed RFID reader on
Mm-hmm.
every doorway that produce goes through. Well, that'll be great and it would work, but implementation rate would be very low
Mm-hmm.
because it's huge capital, huge expense, and additional labor.
Mm-hmm.
If we can capture this information or in current processes or tie it to making your business more efficient. Well, if you did this slight change, you'd improve your productivity or this or that. Oh, and by the way, you'd get traceability components that are required for you.
Absolutely.
One of the a good example is in the and mainly applies to the food service and small store side of the supply chain. But I've seen companies implement for produce deliveries. So, food service distributors, um, they've ensured every carton has a PTI label on it
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
fresh produce, and they've implemented UPS, FedEx style scanning at point of delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And having run food service distribution operations and having paid out millions of dollars in unfounded shortage claims, um, you know, if you back a truck in and you're unloading 35 cases of produce into a restaurant or a commissary or a small store, you can scan 35 times and give them a clean invoice. And all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden, you eliminate your claims department because you scanned it and
Mm-hmm.
you sign for the scan at time of delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And if the label is on a wrong carton, I'll deal with that, and that's very rare.
Yes.
And normally the claims are, I got the cheap stuff and you charge me for the expensive, or I only received a 18 or 20 cartons.
Yes.
Um, solutions like that are pay benefits, aside from traceability, they justify themselves and have a very high ROI. And I've seen some are fairly easy and standalone to implement and
Yes.
don't require um, uh, SAP or IBM consultant to help you implement solutions like that. And where companies have thought, okay, how can I solve another problem and piggyback traceability on top of that? And that one is, and had I had that functionality when in Canada we owned company I worked for. We owned the largest food service company in the country, um, called Circa Food Service. If I would have rolled that out to all 34 of my DCs overnight, and
Right.
I would have been a hero, and I
Right.
would have added tens of millions to the bottom line of the company. Um,
Yes.
Solutions like that. That's a great example, but you know, integrated solutions that solve other problems, because doing something an additional step or process or system purely for traceability, it's like trying to convince someone to buy more insurance. Where's the ROI? My my grandfather started the business. His father ran it. I run it now, and we've never been involved in a food safety recall to date. So why would I change everything
Right.
I'm doing just for that? But if you can say, hey, you can redeploy, 8 of your clerks on your claims desk in especially an environment where we can't find people, and have redeploy them into other areas of your business. Now you got someone listening.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing advice. And yeah, so if we can extend shelf life, if we can improve quality, if we can reduce the burden of staff requirements in this time when it's really difficult to get staff, and we can bring people into conformance with the regulations, then that's the way to go. But telling people just to take medicine that's expensive and they don't even know when they're going to get sick, well, we all know.
Bingo. Yeah, we've all
That's,
been there.
we've seen how challenging that is. But if you can help their business at the same time, then we got a chance at rising to some of these very important challenges that you've raised. So Ed, I gave you like less than 5 minutes to come up with this list, but what are the three songs that have some meaning for you? What are your three favorite songs?
um, right now in my life, I number one is my favorite artist, Bob Seger, and my favorite song by him is "Turn the Page." I
Mm-hmm.
just think that's a deep and a great song. Um,
Uh-huh.
the
And
second
what's
song,
but before we go on to the second, I just unpack that a little bit. What is it that you get out of that song? What's the messaging there?
it brings me back to my youth. I've seen him, I think, 8 times. Um, the saxophone by Alto Reed is amazing in the song. And when I hear it, it's about him being on the road touring, and I can always picture myself in his shoes,
Uh-huh.
and you know, he had long hair and was during the song, people say when he walks into a restaurant, is a woman or a man? I had long hair as a teenager, and it was always a fight between my mother and myself on length of my hair, and so it you know evoked and still does a lot of fun moments in my life.
That's beautiful. So are you so what are you a musician? Do you what part of what does music mean to you?
I can't carry a note in a bag, but I grew up. My father was a early in his career a professional singer in Ireland, and that's how we met my mother. My sister has recorded 8 or 10 or 12 cassettes and CDs. Show you how long she's been doing it, and
Uh-huh.
she's an Irish folk singer, traditional Irish folk music. And my brother had a band, through high school and early adulthood, and I was hanging out with them, and I was their roadie, and they were garage band plus, if you will, and but I've always hung out with musicians and live music. I love attending concerts, and I'll listen to just about any live music as long as it's performed well.
Awesome.
So
I
I've
feel the
met
same way. I feel the same way.
scads of musicians through my life, and some by chance and some on purpose. And yeah, I just really, really appreciate good live music.
Do you do the meet and greet thing? Sometimes you buy a concert ticket and
No,
you can like
I'm too
pay.
cheap to do that.
I recently went to a Heaven 17 concert, which is a kind of an early 80s synth pop band from the UK, and they came to the House of Blues in San Diego. And my friend knew someone who knew the band, and we had the meet and greet tickets. We
Oh,
didn't
that's
pay
cool.
for it. Well, it would have been cool, but I think they saw who was in the meet and greet party, which is basically a bunch of 60-year-old plus guys, and they decided that they were too tired to do it. But I saw later on in the concert they did do their meet and greet when the demographics were slightly different
Oh,
in
okay.
the organization. So that anyway, that was what it was. So song one, what's song two?
Song two is really, and I've always loved the movie Stand By Me and the music in that, and the lead song by Benny King, Stand By Me.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's especially relevant at this stage in my life with pertaining to my wife, and
Okay.
she's always been with me and standing by me and supporting me. And
Awesome.
I first heard the song and saw the movie decades before I met her, but it's very relevant now.
Amazing. Great choice. And what's the third song?
And the last is back from that era, and it's the memories it evokes in my mind in my childhood and growing up in northern Ontario, and it's Sitting on the Dock of the Bay by Otis Redding. And I grew up in Toronto, but every weekend we had a cottage 160 miles north on Georgian Bay. And my fondest memories were probably from 6 years until I young adulthood. We ended up moving up to that small town of Perry Sound, selling our business in Toronto and moving up there. And I spent a lot of time on the water around Georgian Bay and sitting on the dock of the bay. And every time I hear that song, it just takes me right back to a happy place.
Awesome. Awesome. So very literal meaning and it's a
Yeah,
beautiful one as well.
yeah.
Very good. Well, Ed, thanks very much for sharing that with us. I really enjoyed it.
Not a problem. Thanks for forcing me down memory lane.
Excellent. Well, Ed, I have really enjoyed this conversation. We're running out of time, and I feel like we just scratched the surface. We haven't even got onto sustainability. So I want to try and get you back on the show another time, but I just want to thank you for painting this really important picture. And I feel like we just got a bit smarter out of after spending a bit of time with you.
Well, I hope you and your audience found it helpful, and I look forward to discussing sustainability, and I'll probably bring my Tamara, my director of sustainability, along because she knows far more on that subject than I. But you're right, that is a hot, hot, hot topic on sustainability.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it. And, again, if we can help make things sustainable and safer at the same time, then that's all to the good. Ed, I look forward to seeing you at the show in Florida. And I really appreciate you taking time out to talk with us.
All right. Take care and stay safe.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Mr. Beacon Ambient IoT podcast here on YouTube. You can listen to this episode on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed it, please like and share this video, and be sure to subscribe for more weekly videos. For more information about Wiliot and IoT Pixels, head on over to wiliot.com.